Across the world, democracy is on a decline.
Authoritarianism is on the rise.
Global freedom has eroded for the 18th consecutive year.
Audrey Tang, what is your greatest hope for democracy across the globe?
That people see democracy as a social technology, something that people can construct together, that they can improve in the here and now. We can code up political systems.
The Sunflower Movement was a real turning point for Taiwan's democracy.
When the Sunflower Movement happened, I said to my colleague, I have to leave now. Democracy needs me. I brought a very long cable for internet connection. I live streamed through Twitter. Everybody saw it is possible for democracy to evolve, to come up with novel policies simply by asking the people, what should we do together? I was born with a heart defect, and one day I just fainted. I woke up in a hospital, and they told me the hole in my heart has grown. I could die. This awareness that everything can be reset tomorrow reminds me of Taiwanese democracy. We can't lose our democracy just with a couple missiles.
I think there's a lot that the world can learn from Taiwan. The US is running on a 250-year-old operating system. There is a strong desire to move beyond this and properly rethink from first principles. What would democracy in the 21st century actually look like?
We can make the government more open to the public. It'll be easier for people to access the data, to analyze it, transparency.
Audrey has created the opportunity to make Taiwan the most exciting constitutional democracy in the world.
I think it's a very critical moment. China really wants to invade Taiwan.
祖国统一是历史必然.
You're sitting on a place that is the flashpoint if there's going to be World War III. And yet there's calm in the eye of the hurricane. And that calm, I think, emanates from all that Audrey's done.
We can become co-creators of our democratic system, reconfiguring society in a way that is more transparent, more inclusive, more fair.
Good morning and welcome, everybody. Thank you all for being here, and welcome also to you following online. My name is David Björnelo, and I'm one of the founders of Frihamnsdagarna, democracy festival here in Gothenburg. We started up with a simple idea that we wanted to strengthen democracy by bringing people together to have conversation across borders. So I'm really excited to be here today because this is definitely the next level of bringing people together, what we will hear in the discussion here today. When I grew up, I learned that there was democracies and dictatorships. But today we talk about autocracies. That's democracies transforming in a slow process, often through legislation, where power concentrates around fewer and fewer people, checks and balances weaken, and the space for freedom, for free expression shrinks. The agenda for today is, as you already know, to explore if participatory democracy can be a counterforce in these uncertain times. And first, I will have a conversation with Audrey Tang, who you already met here, and then we will have a panel discussion, and finally we'll open up for questions for you guys here. So I'm very, very happy to welcome Audrey Tang up on the stage. Good morning, you can sit here.
Very nice to meet you here.
Okay. How are you, Audrey?
Very good.
Good, thank you.
A lot more sunlight compared to last time I visited Stockholm.
Yeah, this is how it is in Gothenburg. Okay, so it's a quite impressive film that we just saw about you, Audrey. And you're now a globally recognized thought leader. But as we saw, the journey started as a teenage hacker and a civic activist. And in 2014, you occupied the Taiwan Parliament.
Peacefully.
Peacefully, with a long cable. It
Yes.
sounded so easy. You just took a long cable in and start
350 meters.
Yeah. That's impressive just itself. Can you tell us a little bit more background of your story, please, to start up with?
Certainly. So really honored to be here in Taiwan back in 2014. Our president, Ma Ying-jeou, at the time was enjoying a 9% approval rating. So in a country, 24 million people, anything he said, 20 million people very much against him. But those 20 million people are themselves extremely divided because Taiwan was and still is the most connected in terms of broadband as a human right. So everybody was online, and around 2014, as many of you might remember, the social media companies switched their algorithm. Previously, they show us what we subscribe to, but at that time, they changed to whatever keep us glued to the touchscreen, engagement through enragement. So suddenly, the Taiwanese population become very enraged for no reason, and of the 20 million people against President Ma themselves were very divided. One side say that we must be free from China. The other side says that we must be the free China. They start fighting each other a lot on the street and many other places. And at the time, the president and his team tried to ram through a trade deal with Beijing that would have opened up investment in our telecommunication, publication, cybersecurity to Beijing investors, which is very good for business, but not very good for our democracy. And so we occupied the parliament for 3 weeks, not protesting, but demonstrating that we can get 500,000 people on the street and many more online in tables of 10, each talking about one specific aspect of the trade deal, and after 3 weeks converged into a set of very coherent bundle of ideas that the Speaker of the Parliament, Wang Jinping, simply said, okay, the people's version are better. The people are the super intelligence. so why not to go with their idea? So it's a very rare occupy that converge rather than diverge. So I was then tapped as a reverse mentor, people younger than 35 that advise cabinet ministers in the art of the future. And so I worked for 2 years as a kind of reverse mentor in the cabinet office. But after 2 years, I became 35, so too old to be a young mentor. So they promote me to a full minister. Yeah.
Okay. Wow. Did something change within you because you started out as an activist and then you pretty soon become a person in power? Did something change with you then?
No, not at all, because I never work with just one side of the equation. I called myself in a Lagrange point back then. If you know a little bit of how like satellites work, there's between the Earth and the Moon, there's this 5 points in which the gravity is felt equally from the two bodies. So I'm not orbiting the government. I'm not orbiting the movement. I'm in the middle, relaying GPS signals or whatever between the two. So I actually move very little. I didn't really move my position. I just feel, if the gravity is stronger here, like autocracy, then I move my orbit away a little bit. But if it's becoming weaker, the legitimacy, for example, of the civil service becoming weaker, then becoming closer to them.
Oh, thank you. So one of your big ideas is plurality.
Yes.
I'm not sure that everybody knows what that is. Would you like to describe it to us?
Sure. It's a very simple idea. Basically, it says polarization is fuel. So I love polarization. I love populist leaders, very charismatic, extreme ones, because they provide the fuel for democratic renewal. In many democracies, they see this kind of populist energy as a volcano. So you have to detect it early and maybe evacuate if it erupts, it end up in maybe occupy the parliament, but not peacefully. And so what we have seen around the world is that many people shy away from talking in public space, from expressing their ideas, from having a real debate, because they're very afraid of triggering the volcano in their polity. And plurality basically says, actually, if you build an engine so that such focused conversation can occur between the most extreme left and the most extreme right, then they actually agree on most of the things. They just did not know about this. So by creating this geothermal engine, we can convert in Taiwan. We have 3 earthquakes every day somewhere. We're the youngest tectonic island on Earth, only 4 million years old. So every year, the tip of Taiwan grow by half a centimeter because of these earthquakes, right? So the point here is that if you see the democracy itself as a social technology and you invest in the geothermal engine, at some point, you stop fearing about volcano or earthquake. You say, oh, it's great. We can tap it for renewal.
Interesting. I think we will talk more about that with the panel later, but I just have a follow-up question there, because it has to, you have to empower people to be, because I think many are afraid of the volcano and the strong differences between people.
Exactly.
And you have to create these safe rooms.
Right. So let me illustrate it with a very concrete example. Because the trust level was 9% by 2014. So anything that is better than this is very much desired by the public sector. So we started building what's called a deliberative rooms or deliberative polling systems. And we work on more than 100 cases. So by 2020, the trust level is back at more than 70%. And today, more than 90% in Taiwan, according to BTI, say that the democratic process is at least fairly good. So 2 years ago, one example, we saw a lot of deepfake scam on social media. If you scroll TikTok or Facebook in Taiwan, chances are you will see a celebrity like Jensen Huang, the NVIDIA Taiwanese CEO, trying to give you investment advice or cryptocurrency. If you click Jensen talk to you very convincingly, but it's not Jensen, it is a deepfake clone running on NVIDIA GPU, try to persuade you, and people lose millions of dollars because of this scam. But we are the most free in all of Asia, so in terms of internet freedom, according to Freedom House. So we cannot ban or censor anything by its content. So we sent 200,000 SMS, text message, to random number around Taiwan, from 111, the trusted government number, and say, okay, what should we do together? And thousands of people chime in with their ideas. And then we chose randomly 447 people, a mirror of our population. So the same demographics, random sampling as the ethnicity, gender, place they live, education level, and so on. And they met online in 44 rooms of 10. So each person looking at 9 other people virtually. And the only rule is that a civic AI keeps the conversation civil, so you cannot disrupt each other for more than 5 seconds. Quiet people must speak up. The robot will actually prod them to speak up. You're feeling very shy, right? And then the ground rule is that each table must find something they can live with. So it's not that the extreme idea will bubble up. They never bubble up. You have to convince the 9 other people. And so one table, for example, say, let's label all advertisements as probably scam, like a cigarette label. And if Jensen Huang signs off on it, then you take it down. Very good idea. Another table say, if an unsolicited, unsigned ad causes somebody to lose 7 million, then the social media company, because it pushes to me without me subscribing, is a crime perpetrator. So it must also pay the 7 million in damage. Another good idea, joint liability. The other said at the time TikTok did not have Taiwan office. So if they ignore our liability, what should we do? Oh, every day they ignore us. We slow down their video by 1%. A very good idea. So again, it's not a censorship. We never look at the content, right? So it's very proportional. So by the end of the day, all the 44 civic AI facilitator robots melded together into a consensus statement. And then people look at the statement at the end of the day, voted on it, 85% said yes. The other 15 are like, okay, we can live with it. And so it became law in just 2 months. And so last year, 2025, there are just almost no deepfake ads anymore. According to Reuters, it's down by more than 90%. And so the point here is that the democracy can actually evolve faster than the threat. We always say for tech policy that somehow, we're just chasing the car of tech innovation. But this conclusively proves that we can build a steering wheel together. So the car is not slowing down and you're not chasing it, but you are steering it by moving into what's called a social license to operate. So the polity of Taiwan say, in order for Meta and TikTok to enter our regime, well, you have to follow those ground rules. Yeah.
Good example.
Thank you.
Did you say in the beginning that you had hundreds? You did this process in
hundreds of times.
Hundreds of times. Okay, and the technology is there and it's open. It's free.
It's just an open poll, basically. Yeah. So think of it as a better poll. It is not trying to take away the job of ministers or MPs, but just equipping them with a better poll. Yeah.
Very good. Okay, we will invite the panel in a short time, but I have to ask you one more thing. From the movie and from what I said in the beginning, the world seems to be in a really bad place when it comes to democracy.
The third wave of democracy is backsliding.
Yeah, and you are traveling the world. What's your honest reading of where we are right now?
The larger civic wave is coming.
It is?
Yes. So I think the next wave of democratic renewal begins not from top-down institutions, not from occupied parliaments, but rather from like dinner tables. Actually, the Pope wrote about this a week or so ago in the Magnificat Humanitas, the new encyclical, in which he said that it is an error to think about technology solving all these problems, like building a Tower of Babel. He says that each community, each neighborhood, each family can rebuild one part of the wall according to what they want, what they need. And it's a little bit like personal computing, right? It's at a fraction of the power requirement and power level of the largest mainframe cloud computer. But each community can customize the intelligence to their own needs, and therefore bridge between the differences, like the climate justice people and the Pope's biblical creation care people. Again, they're doing the same thing, objectively speaking, but they speak very different words. And now for the first time, you can have this local language model that translate across those differences. We try it with very respected pollster, Napolitan Institute in the US, even on the most extreme left and the right. More than 94% believe, some core belief. They just express it in completely different words. So if you translate socially, they actually coordinate and come to what we call the uncommon ground, the rarely discovered common ground.
Common ground. Very good. Thank you. You seem hopeful. Thank you. Okay, let's thank Audrey for this first minutes of discussion. And let us invite the panel to join us on stage. Ole von Yxkull, Executive Director of the Right Livelihood Foundation. Welcome. Jenny Antonsson, Planning Lead for Democracy and Citizen Services here at the City of Gothenburg. And Petter Joelsson, Digital Director and Co-founder of the Digidem Lab. Welcome. Okay, so let's bring this discussion a little bit closer to home. But first, I would like to ask you, Ole, Right Livelihood, you recognize people who find practical solutions for the world's most urgent problems. Would you consider democracy itself one of those problems right now?
I mean, democracy is, do you hear me? Yeah, democracy is under threat, definitely, but democracy is the solution also. And it's wonderful to be here in Gothenburg. You say we bring the solutions closer to home. I think you are doing that here in the most amazing way. We at Right Livelihood have been presenting the Right Livelihood Award, sometimes called the Alternativa Nobelpriset, in Stockholm every year since 1980. So we get almost 200 nominations every year, and we have 4 amazing laureates, and Audrey Tang was one of the laureates last year. So yeah, we have our finger a little bit on the pulse of political developments around the world. And yes, we do see that democracy is under threat. We see that in empirical data. Actually, the most cited data around the world comes here from Gothenburg, from VDEM Institute, where 20 years ago you had half of the world's population living in democracies and half of the world's population living in autocracies. Now 20 years later, this is 25 to 75. So 75% of the world's population live under autocratic rule. But then we absolutely see this wave that you talk about, a groundswell of huge and continuing support, not just value support for democratic values, but also for building and testing things to build our democracy. So I would say democracy is very strong when it comes to that base of support, but it has very powerful enemies also.
Thank you. Jenny, you lead the democracy and citizen engagement for the city of Gothenburg. What does that actually mean in practice? What do you do?
So in Gothenburg, we're lucky to have very forward-looking politicians, and they have made sure that the whole part of our organization must work actively with enabling, creating conditions for participation. And so our department champion that work, and me and the team that I belong to, we support our colleagues in the wider organization, and so we provide training, we create networks for peer support, we have a handbook that can be used by everyone, and so we help our colleagues in the wider organization to integrate citizen engagement into the structures of the organization, and so basically helping others to work better with the citizens, but also while also working for them.
Do you use the kind of tools that Audrey described before? These rooms of 10 coming together?
No, not in that way. No. But we are alike in thinking a bit. Yeah.
Okay, let's talk a little bit more about
Exactly, we'll come into that.
Yes, okay. Petter, at the DigiDem Lab, you work daily on deliberative processes at local and also national level. Yeah. And how would you describe citizens' interest in getting involved? Do people want to join?
Yeah, I mean, they do. They definitely do. Then again, I've been working with this for 10 years, and Audrey was one of my big inspirations. So in 2017, just about when we were starting to work with Swedish cities with participatory democracy and digital tools for that. So, but still, we haven't seen a breakthrough in Sweden. Gothenburg is doing really nice work with participatory budgets, with citizen assemblies, but it's not on the scale of a lot of other European countries like Helsinki in Finland, Paris, Madrid, Barcelona. We're still just doing a fraction of what's being done internationally. So there is still some way to go, and there's a lot of experimenting to be done, I think, and that's like one of my main takeaways from Taiwan and Audrey's work. Like, we have to be open. If we want to improve democracy, we have to have a bit of a more experimental mindset about it, and have this kind of. I'm also from this a little bit from this programmer background where you looking for bugs and fixing them and trying out solutions. So yeah, that's my long answer to that question.
Okay. Good. So I think maybe the answer is already out there. But my first question for all of you is: does the ideas that Audrey presented, do they travel? Are they applicable in all different cultural and political contexts? This idea of bringing people into discussions. What do you think, Audrey? What do you think, Ole?
Very quickly, I think it requires a condition in which a charismatic extremist populist leader emerge and gain this legitimacy, especially among young people. And then the establishment will have no other choice but to reform. Very recently, we have seen Japan exactly this case. They have the young people losing faith in democratic process and the LDP, the ruling party, for a very long time. And then we saw the emergence of alternative parties. And then almost immediately, there's a counter movement, the civic wave coming. There's a very young science fiction writer, Takahiro Anno. 2 years ago, he was 33 and read the book that we co-wrote with like Glenn Weil, you saw in the movie, called Plurality. And he decided to run for Tokyo governor on the platform of raw listening. And he was 33, no party support, nobody knows him. But he crowdsourced his platform by live streaming 24/7 on YouTube as a VTuber, virtual YouTuber. And you can just call him or hashtag him and he will debate you. He is a deepfake clone, but authorized by him. And if you win the debate, he upgraded his platform with your idea and then announced that on YouTube. And a very much interesting arrangement. So by the end of the process, the eve in the election, independently, his platform, crowdsourced and ranked best in the Tokyo governor race, ahead even of the governor Koike. But of course, Koike won the re-election. But Anno won more than 2% of the votes. And so Koike tapped Anno to run the Tokyo City 2050 consultation. That was a success and propelled him to national visibility. And then he ran for the House of Councilor and now he is a senator in Japan. And then he formed a new party, the Future Party, Team Mirai, and now they got 11 seats in the lower house as well. And so they got almost the same votes as the more extreme Sanseito. And so the LDP itself had a choice. And then Takaichi-san, the new prime minister, she chose the Anno side. And so reformed the LDP to be extremely good at listening at young people's voice. And Takaichi-san is now enjoying, I think, more than 70% support among young people. Right? So this is a story that's unfolding before our eyes.
Yeah. Okay. Wow.
Yeah, I'm not sure I agree that it has to be a counter reaction. I think the ability to cooperate is deep in the human species already. We wouldn't be here if we hadn't developed that millennia ago. And at least, in communities which used to be the setting in which we developed as a species. You see that around the world, people's in various different forms in which communities and villages and groups of people experiment with participatory methodologies. So in a way, you could say it doesn't even need to travel. It is already there. It is something that resonates with every one of us. And we had this beautiful example when we met in Stockholm together, when you met one of the other laureates groups. That was the emergency response rooms of Sudan. And in Sudan, yes, this has become very powerful now as the society's reply to an external shock. In this example, it is not an autocratic shock, but it's the war, it's the civil war situation. And there has been historically in Sudan a lot of community solidarity. Right? But I think what they achieved now, because of digital technology, is to connect these various groups into a humanitarian response that is more powerful than any of the conventional, classical international aid, because it's already there in the communities. They say that now that they are connecting with each other, thanks to simple tools like WhatsApp groups, etc. Now they say we are like water. We cannot be. No one can drive a wedge into that movement, and it's very powerful. And yeah, I would say they build on something that we all already have in our communities. And I think that's also, how you conceive of digital technology, that it's a tool, but it's a tool that connects the real human experience that we have in our communities and that we should be able to rely on.
I would like to ask Jenny and Petter, if you could describe a little bit from your perspective more, how does it work when you bring in people in this processes of participating? How do you do it?
How we do it?
Yeah.
Well, we are a big local actor. We're the biggest local authority in the country in terms of employees, and also local authorities and public sector in general. We have a tradition of being used to having quite a lot of power. It's quite top down, and so we're trying to change that slowly, in seeing our citizens, our residents, people of Gothenburg, more as an asset, of bearers of knowledge, bearers of perspectives, people who we need, rather than people we should engage because that's what you should do. So we actually want them also to feel to feel like we like we care and like we want to listen. And so what do we do? Well, we have lots of different. We have a toolbox. We have lots of different methods. It all depends on the context and what we want to do. And I'm thinking that's for the question that you were just answering as well. That all of this, everything that we talk about, it translates, but we have to do that translation. So we can't just do what everyone else is doing. And I can give just one quick example that Peter is also working on with participatory budgeting, which is basically where you give a sum of money to people, to local people, and they get to decide what to do with that. And that's something that's being done all over the world. And you mentioned Barcelona, and that's one example where they do a lot of that work. And so the principles are the same, but in Gothenburg, we need to do it more. We need to adapt to our local conditions here, and to our local context and our local communities. And therefore, we do it not as much online as they do in Barcelona, because we work in areas where people might need the online bits of it, like voting online, what should we put the money on, what should we do with the money. But we also need to do much more work on actually being out talking to people, making sure that they understand what this is about, making sure that they know how to do it, making sure that they have access to a laptop or wherever is needed. So we need to translate that method to what works for us and our purposes and what our politicians want us to do and what we want to do. And so actually get that proper participation and not just hoping that it will work out.
Okay. What do you say, Peter? How do you set up a process to involve people in a...
Yeah, so since for around 1.5 years now, we've been helping out with a central participatory platform for the city of Gothenburg, which it's based on code from the city of Barcelona. It's called Decidim, and the website is medborgarinflytande.göteborg.se. And yeah, so this is being used for the participatory budgets, which are done right now in Biskopsgården, the northeast, and Tynnered, like 3 areas of the city, with a 3 million kronor budget for this year. And we've also been supporting a citizen assembly on this platform, which has had like physical meetings, but it's all been documented transparently on the digital platform. And it's being starting to be used now for a space for LGBTQ people in the city as their place for influence and discussion. So it's having a broad use now and becoming like a hub for the city of Gothenburg in a really interesting way. Yeah, I think it has a lot of potential, and what I would like to see more is the kind of like doing the kind of processes that you work with, like the volcano things. We've seen internationally that these kind of new methods of working with democracy can take on like super controversial issues. Like for this method of citizen assembly has been used for like the abortion issue in Ireland, the most controversial issue there. It's been used for the mass tourism issue in the Canary Islands with the problems with Swedish tourists, which is the most...
Not only Swedish.
Some British as well. The most controversial issue there. So it can be used in these use cases where there's like a super burning controversial issue and like designing a process around actually taking care of that anger and frustration and like channeling it in a constructive way.
Okay. So. I have to... you have to help me here, because maybe someone in the room wants to be part of a deliberative process and use these tools that you have described. But as I understand it, most of these processes are initiated by those already in power. they are the deciding that now it's time to listen and to engage people. And the people who are to be engaged, they are randomly selected to fit in all the demographics. So what are the odds really to be part of a process? You have to be really lucky. And what can you actually do about it? I don't really get the picture here. You understand my question? Can you help me?
I can explain a little bit how in Taiwan we do that. It is not just autocracy, right? There is a agenda setting part before that. So before we actually send out the 200,000 tickets, SMS text messages, there is a open-ended process where people can chime in online about what kind of social license to operate for AI do they want to see in the future. And so this is what we call an ideathon, not a hackathon in which you have to write some code, but rather an ideathon where all you have to do is to imagine some future and share that future with others. And so you would post a statement of how you want Taiwan to be in 2040 when it comes to AI, and then a short statement that other people can like or dislike. But there is no reply button, so there's no way for trolls to grow. And we've used this process like in Bowling Green, Kentucky, where they ask what could Bowling Green be in the year 2040 or 2050. And now I just learned that Santa Cruz is doing the same process. So the platform is called Polis, P-O-L-I-S. And the platform basically highlights two things. First, it clusters people to people who feel strongly one way or the other way. And the second, it highlights the bridges, the idea that get upvotes from both groups of people. And because it's aggregated in a way that propel the upwing, it doesn't need a rigorous random sampling. In Bowling Green, I think almost 1/10 of the population joined. They just went door to door with a QR code. Anybody can scan and then join. And because if everybody vote the same, it's just one dot in that map. So it rewards plurality. And so at the end, the mayor, the development groups, and so on can pre-commit to say whatever people all agree as worthy of discussion. Then we run a deeper process, maybe a sortation process, to deliberate about the actual measure to get it done. But the idea of like what's not working, that can be crowdsourced by pretty much everyone. So it's a two-stage process.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it's also, I mean, these citizen assemblies, even when people are randomly selected, when you broadcast the proceedings of such a group, and one example would be the Climate Citizen Assembly in France, I think 3 years ago. You know, they were sitting in a hall like a parliament. They had access to very good expertise. They were hearing these experts, and those discussions were being broadcast, and also took in information from the general public, and there were participatory elements to it. But I do think that people also watching that felt represented, not because in that case they had elected these people, but because they were made up as a cross-section, like your example of French society. So in a way you could maybe identify more with the person who had been randomly selected for that assembly, who just before that had a job like you, than with the professional politician, where a lot of also the populist rift, I think, has formed in our societies. And that I think is the really fascinating element with these citizen assemblies.
Okay, I have one final question and then we will open up. We might have a microphone also. Okay, great. So the tools exist and you seem quite positive, all of you, that we are heading in a good direction here. I think
everyone would Sweden if we listen to Petter.
Okay. I'm not sure it matters if citizens don't see themselves as co-creators. And from my perspective, I think in Sweden we know that we have to vote every 4th year, and most of us do. But in the meantime, we're not really that. We are free, but we're not really used to be taking part.
Yeah.
So and then it might not be a technical problem. It's more of a cultural one. How do we build a culture of participation?
Well, I think we have a lot to learn from people who are doing this kind of work in countries where the democratic space is shrinking, where it is already, I mean, you mentioned the process of autocratizing, because when you have to defend your democratic rights every day, then in a paradox way, democracy becomes almost more alive because you're living with this challenge. And I often feel, if you take Sweden, our democratic space is still, like a big football field, but we are no longer trained to use that whole football field. I think we've become too accustomed that all these rights kind of exist, and by not making very active use and also testing the boundaries of the rights that we have, we're actually losing or weakening the civic muscle that it needs to fully exercise the rights. So for me, some of the most interesting learnings are with people, talk to democracy activists and human rights activists from countries where you have to defend these rights every single day and go to the boundaries and test them. Before that, you don't know if you're really free.
Yeah. Okay. Any other comments?
Yeah, I think we also need to work on the relationships that we already have, and that we and the people who knock on our door. That's a challenge that we have. That we are quite top down, like you're saying as well. But we have lots of organizations locally and lots of people locally who want to do good things, and they come to us for support, for help. And we don't fully have the structure in how to open that door always. So I think by doing that, by being better at not having such a clear idea yourself about this is how we should do it, but actually opening up to listening even more than we do, I think that could be a way of also reaching out to more people. So through the ones who are already engaged, who are already interested, who also can open doors to more people, to more organizations, to more groups, communities. That would be a way of reaching out, but that requires of us to be more open than we are, if I'm honest.
Okay.
Yeah, just like shortly. I mean, it's hard to say where to start with like the Swedish context, for example. But one thing is like we're very decentralized and on the local authority level, so there is a lot that can be done on a local level in cities, but we're also really lacking like national institutional support for these kind of initiatives. Like I've talked to people in Scotland where all of their local authorities are doing participatory budgets, and they get the digital platforms and support from the national government of Scotland. But we don't have any of these things in place. So there's a lot to be done on a national level. There's also opportunities on a local level. So I think we need to start in both these ends.
But in the Taiwan example, I mean, it was not given to you. You fought for it.
Yeah,
and exactly. That's an attitude I sometimes lack in Sweden.
Yeah, because you also said that, Audrey, before, that the next wave is coming. It's from the people.
Yeah.
It's not from the government or a new department saying that here's a tool that you can use when it suits you.
But I also think there's a change, not just from our side, but just from people in general, to also understand that democracy and participation can be something different than it is, and that you've been trained to. Just a quick example of our last Citizen Assembly that we had people who came in, participants of the Citizen Assembly who came in, were quite skeptical to the whole process and what will this lead to? Will people actually listen to us? Do the politicians care? What we saw was that when they understood that this is actually a well thought through process, this is not something that we do that won't lead to anything, that made it easier for them to participate. And so I think that people need this. There's a mind shift here. It's a quite big thing
on many levels.
Can I say one?
But we have to open up for questions. But of course, you can say one thing, Ole.
No, just one observation on that. In surveys, when you study what motivates people to engage, to be engaged themselves for change, and I mean, classically, this I think is done in the climate field, and classical is, you inform them about the looming crisis, you share all the scientific insights with them, but actually the number one motivating factor is exactly what you say, that people realize the link between what I'm doing here and an actual change. That's the number one motivator for citizen participation.
Okay, good. So do we have any questions in the room?
Hello.
Yeah, hello.
Yes. My question is: we are talking about motivation, but I want to talk more about financing as well, because I think the people who have a lot of money and wealth, maybe they're not so motivated to change things, but the people who don't have a lot of money, they might not have a lot of free time to spend. They might not have the wealth to finance that sort of process. And I think now funding for culture, funding for these social projects, funding for democracy projects are shrinking. And so I want to know more about how to finance and fund this sort of thing.
Yeah, good question.
Great question.
What do you think about that? Who should pay for the changes?
Yeah. No, it's. I mean, you all know these inequality curves, right? When you rank the whole world population from the poorest, and then it goes for a long time like that, and then it goes like this. The enormous inequality that we have in the world, where 1% of the global population are controlling half of all the wealth in the world, and of course that completely distorts what should be the democratic curve, where we all have the same right, like we're all equal. And just yesterday, I think the World Inequality Lab in Paris, the group around Thomas Piketty, was launching a report about a better, more equal, more ecological, sustainable future. And it had the distribution question, a redistribution of unequal wealth as the absolute core tenet. Without that, I don't think that a lot of the reforms that we need will be possible, because we're living on a finite planet. It doesn't work if the assets are distributed in that extremely unfair way. And it trickles down to everything, it makes all problems more difficult.
We have one more question there, but there was also hands there. Yes, so I think we might, we start there on the top front row. There was a hand.
Hello, my name is Finn. Thank you for the panel talk. My question is a bit following up with her question as well about, we didn't talk about really the pink elephant in the room, that how much resources goes to AI. Mm-hmm. And then following that question, I would also like to mention up north where the Sápmi land, and then there being sort of now there's a talk about taking them away from where the elk can graze, and then turning it into a power plant to support the AI industry. So in that sense, and they are also, you can see the Sápmi people, they are quite maybe they don't live in the very dense city in a way. I mean, how can they use, I don't know, in a way they use AI to form their opinion, actually to tell the Swedish government that we're not part of this green colonialism that you want to put us in. And how can we move forward and still keep our tradition as well? So I think that's a very important question for us to think about.
Okay, so there's actually two questions in the same, that we're building all these facilities to that AI has to have, and also Sápmi land in the north of Sweden. What's your take on this, Audrey?
Yeah, the Finland, I believe, the Sitra, the national think tank, have run exactly that, using Polis to ask what does Finland think when it comes to the social license to operate for advanced AI in the Finnish communities. And I think they inspired California with Gavin Newsom, who is now doing, I think the first wave ends today, to ask all Californians whose work is impacted by AI somehow when it comes to apprenticeship, belonging, community dignity, and so on, to again draw the social license for AI companies to operate in California. So we are already seeing this wave. I believe the participatory budgeting is very important for the first establishment of the recurring revenue for pro-democratic, pro-social constructions. So we don't rely on private sector for our public square. It's an oxymoron to me, but many in the US, for example, is de facto using the SpaceX AI platform, used to be called Twitter, as a public space. But then, of course, because many people here in Europe think that Elon Musk running the public space for European people is kind of strange. And so I personally moved my Blue Sky account from California to a Swedish company called W Social. And so it's hosted in Finland, I believe. And so again, my recommendation algorithm and my data store is now Nordic, but then my followers on Blue Sky from the US and other places don't even know, right? Because it's interoperability. I can move without giving up my community. And so the same, I think, apply to AI. If we know what we are doing, if we just want to train an AI that folds protein or an AI that folds laundry or something, then it doesn't need the huge data center. The huge data center is only needed if we don't know what we're going to ask next. So they have to train this do everything model that folds some protein, folds some laundry, folds Studio Ghibli movie or something, because it doesn't know what you're going to ask it. So having some sort of a civic process to set the social license to operate and say, oh, we just want these 50 uses of AI, and each can live in small models in our laptop, in our personal computing, then we don't need actually new data centers. I think that is also a very creative process to run this before investing in data centers.
Thank you. Peter, you would like to reply, and then we have the last question here from the gentleman on the second row. I think he was waving first, actually.
Okay.
So, please, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to add quickly to this. Like, I think what we're seeing now and what Elon Musk and others making really clear to us is that ownership of technology is extremely important. We need to be digital commons instead of these like digital mega corporations. And this is, I mean, this is extremely important when it comes to democratic processes, which should be transparent and not being manipulated and so on. So there's a huge like digital shift that we need to make that involves the ownership of AI and how it collects data.
Thank you. Please.
Hi, my name is Bo. It's a bit related to the financing issue before a question. There's an irony, I believe, that the initiative in Ireland came from the government to involve the public. But in Sweden, my experience is that politicians are interested in kind of showing that we have engaged the public in our democracy, but we need to control these initiatives. So have participants of 20, 30, perhaps not more, so we can handle it. But instead of having 100 participants, for example. So there's the counterforce in Sweden, I believe, in this way. Regarding the finance issue, I think that there's lack of vision on that democracy can be something else besides voting every 4 years. And I think that there's a frustration in business. For example, the energy issue.
Please, you have to come to the question now because we're running out of time.
Yeah, the financing could perhaps come from business because they're frustrated. I believe, for example, in the energy issue, it's locked.
I think we got the question. Yeah. Could private companies be part of this and finance these processes? Mm-hmm. What do you think about that?
Yeah, we can tax them.
We can tax them.
Well,
what do you think? What do you think, Audrey?
Yeah, so because I was a minister not just for open government, but also for youth engagement and also social entrepreneurship, we do see a new set of entrepreneurs that use this kind of ideas, not just for customer relationship management, but rather for crowdsourcing and crowdfunding. In fact, crowdfunding is extremely strong in Taiwan. Many of the largest, including the Sunflower Movement's communication campaign was crowdfunded on Flying V and Zezek and many other platforms. And so I think the crowdfunding business model is fundamentally different in that you just need to make action fashionable. It's a little bit like an ice bucket challenge. It's not fun if you just put ice water on your head. What's the fun in that? But if you make it extensible, if you make it viral, if everybody does it a little bit differently and tag 5 other people, then suddenly you have a business model because it becomes fashionable to participate in the common cause, which is LLS, right? So I think the point here is that we need policy entrepreneurs that work with social entrepreneurs to design crowdfunding models so they can show that this alternative business model do exist, and sometimes they become the mainstream. Like a consumer cooperative was a kind of niche idea in many parts of the world, but in Japan, in Taiwan, with the homemakers union, they're the largest buyers now of many organic food and so on. So I think this can happen in the private sector if we think of private sector as democracies. Yeah. Maybe not all the way to co-ops as the first try, but sometimes approaching the co-ops with more shareholder and stakeholder participation.
Thank you. Okay,
can I just give a quick comment to the first part of the question?
Actually, you will have to wait a little bit because I asked the question before, will this take 60 minutes? And I said, yes, I will be sharp on the timing. But since we started 2-3 minutes after 9, we will finish 2-3 minutes after 10. But we're really in the end here now. So I will just give you the chance in the panel to give one concrete takeaway for the audience, and you have to be pretty sharp about this. You can't elaborate too much, and then you will have your chance, Jenny. You can have to make a decision here. So we will start with you, Petter.
Yeah.
One concrete takeaway for the audience from this conversation that we had today.
Yeah, I think like being more open to experimentation when it comes to democracy. That's what I want to take forward.
Good. You have to be more
open to experimenting when it comes to democracy.
Good. Thank you. Jenny?
Well, having listened to everything, I think that a shift and a different future is possible, but it needs all of us to work together from us and from you and from everyone. So everyone needs to chip in.
Thank you.
And I think my most important point is that democratic participation is something that we all already have. I mean, we have the right, we have the ability to do it, and we have all the right that technology should serve that and not the other way around. And it's on us to insist on that.
Well, even if you're not currently the Nordic player in digital transformation of entire democratic systems in the continent, I think you can be the referee because everybody trusts you. And, like W Social gets the trust from not just the Nordic people, but the entire Europe and the entire world and Taiwanese as well. Because everybody knows that if it goes wrong, people here, whistleblowers, journalists, radical transparency, will be able to reveal them. And so I think have this credible neutrality is a national treasure. And so not just think about how to apply it locally, but also build a much more radically transparent participatory infrastructure for the whole world.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Petter Joelsson, Jenny Antonsson, Ole von Uxkull, and Audrey Tang. And a big... Yes, you will get a little gift here from Ali. And a big thank you for Digidem Lab and the Right Livelihood Foundation and Stadsbiblioteket Göteborg for being here today, and all of you. Thank you.
Thank you.